Hello everyone. Um, this video is one of the lecture series on the concept of school mapping. In the previous one, I tried to take a look at the meaning, definitions, and objectives of school mapping. And as you can see on the screen, I want to be talking on the importance. Of course, I start with the importance, and of course, process of school mapping. And as usual, my name has not changed. I am Maruf Akinwale Oladejo. I am from the Department of Educational Management, University of Lagos, Nigeria. Uh, for the purpose of this lecture, I am hopeful that by the end of the presentation, you should be able to trace the historical developments of school mapping. You should be able to discuss at least 7 benefits or importance of studying school mapping. And finally, you should be able to explain the stages involved in school mapping process. Now, the historical development of school mapping exercise can be traced back to the ancient civilizations. You know, during that period, early schools, early societies, they used to mark their territories. They used to indicate their boundaries on maps. And educational institutions, were often associated with religious sites during the period of ancient civilizations. So what I'm saying here is that apart from those early societies trying to indicate their own boundaries on the maps, they also ensure that the early schools were located and associated with religious sites. For example, in ancient Greece, maps were used to illustrate the layout of the academy, which was dedicated to the Greek god Apollo. So they used map. So the issue of school mapping exercise is not something that just started. Like I said, it could be traced back to the ancient civilizations. Now, there are different eras that the development of school mapping exercise, has passed through. And like I said, the historical development actually started with, the ancient civilizations. So during the period of ancient civilizations, Uh, we have early societies that mark their territories, mark their boundaries on maps, and most of the religious sites have their schools, and the schools were also clearly, marked on the map. During the period of the Renaissance, that was when significant focus on educational reform and the establishment of schools, were recorded. There was focus on educational reforms. There was significant attention to the establishment of schools. And when schools were created, there was the need, for maps to be used, to be created with a view to identifying and locating schools, colleges, and universities across different regions. In fact, the period of that Renaissance, the era of the Renaissance, like I said, had significant focus, made significant changes when it comes to the issue of school mapping. The Renaissance era was followed by the 18th century. During the 18th century, there was a creation of more detailed and comprehensive school maps. When I said more detailed and comprehensive, it is because the created school maps now had additional information such as the type of the institution, the subject being taught, the number of students enrolled, the number of teachers in the school. So it was during the 18th century, the era of 18th century, that we now have, detailed information about school maps. So it went beyond just, creating maps that will locate schools, universities, and the colleges, during the Renaissance era. It now said, okay, which, school is noted for this. What type of institution is school A or university B? What are the subjects that are being taught there? How do we have, what is the number of students enrolled? What about the staff strength? So school mapping exercise during the 18th century gave detailed, information. Moving forward with respect to the historical development of school mapping, when we got to the era, the 19th century era, and this was when there was industrial revolution. There was industrial revolution, and with the advent of the industrial revolution, school mapping now became even more crucial, more vital, more important, you know, because government now sought to ensure the provision of education to a rapidly growing population. During the industrial revolution period, there was the population was growing rapidly. The population was growing rapidly, and there was the need, on the part of the government, you know, to now see how we gonna make, education available to people. And with that, government now saw, the need for effective school mapping so that we can make education available to the rapidly growing population. So at that time, school maps were used to assess the distribution of schools, to identify areas with insufficient educational facilities. Now, the 20th century, the era of 20th century was divided into two, when it comes to the historical development of a school mapping. The early 20th century, that was when there were advancements in technology which include improved printing techniques and cartography, which include enhanced, the advancement in technology now further enhanced the accuracy and detail of school mapping. It is true that we have witnessed more detailed school mapping exercise, but as technology advanced, it led to the enhancement, it led to the promotion of the accuracy and detail of school mapping exercise. So this allowed for the creation of more elaborate and informative school maps, encompassing not only educational institutions but also other related facilities like, libraries, laboratories, and playing grounds. So it is not only at that period, it is not only educational institutions providing educational institutions, school plans, and what have you. Then what about other equally related, facilities that will make teaching, learning, process more effective? So attention now started shifting to such related facilities like libraries, laboratories, and of course, playground. Now, like I said, the 20th century um, uh, is divided into two. We have just spoken about the early part, then the late 20th century. What happened during this period, with respect to uh, the developments of school mapping exercise? During the late 20th century, school mapping became increasingly digitalized with the advent of computers and geographic information systems, GIS. So what I'm saying here is that during the late 20th century, school mapping has gone digitalized. The advent of computers has made it more convenient to use to digitalize the school mapping exercise. The geographic information systems has also made it equally much easier for school mapping to be digitalized. So this revolutionized school mapping. The use of computers, the use of GIS now revolutionized school mapping by providing educators and policymakers with real-time data on school locations, student populations, and educational resource allocation. You know, um, you can on the system you can tap and get data on school locations, on student population, on how educational resources, have been allocated. And the last stage, the last era in the historical development of school mapping is the current 21st century. The current 21st century, in which, school mapping now continue to evolve with the integration of advanced technologies, emerging technologies like the satellite imagery, geospatial data, and online mapping platforms. All these advanced technologies now provide more detailed, more customizable, and accessible maps that empower education stakeholders to make informed decisions regarding school planning, regarding resource allocation, and how to improve educational equity. This is the stage that we have, and it keeps evolving. It will not stop here as we, as technologies revolutionize the education. We will keep, see how school mapping as an exercise, as a vital tool, in educational planning. We keep evolving. We keep evolving. Um, Based on the objectives that are highlighted, the other objective is, for us to be able to state at least 5 benefits to discuss the importance of school mapping. So at this juncture, what is the importance of school mapping? Why do we, need to engage in school mapping exercise? In the previous video, I only tried to highlight the objectives, but here I'm talking about the relevance, the importance, the rationale, the justification for the inclusion of this topic, in the program of educational management. Now, the first one is accessibility. School mapping allows stakeholders to easily find information about schools within their area. Yeah, especially with the modern day, revolution that has taken place in the field of education via, advancement in emerging technologies. On the map, on the Google, we can easily, find information about schools within their area. That is what makes school mapping exercise very, very important. Whatever information you need, be it on the available facilities, the situational analysis in terms of infrastructure, in terms of school enrollment, in terms of staff strength, we can easily have access to those pieces of information or data. The second one is planning and decision making. Policymakers can identify gaps in educational services, which will enable them to make informed decisions about resource allocation, school development, and of course, infrastructure improvements. When we embark on school mapping exercise, the essence is to restructure. The essence is to identify locations where new schools are to be located. The essence is to identify gaps. And when we identify gaps, we as policymakers will be able to make informed decisions. Decisions that border on resource allocation, that border on school development, that border on infrastructure improvements. In fact, decisions that have to do with staff requirements. To that extent, school mapping is very, very important. What about equity and access? When I started in the previous one of the previous lectures, I said that we usually, notice inequalities, notice disparities in the education system. So this is one of the reasons why we need to embark on school mapping exercise, because it eliminates inequalities in access to education. How does it do that? How does school mapping, do that? How does it eliminate inequalities in access to education? It does that. It does it by identifying areas with limited school options, with overcrowding, areas, I mean, that requires improvement in educational opportunities for underserved communities. So school mapping exercise does this by identifying such areas that have limited resources, areas that have overcrowded students, areas that requires improvement in educational opportunities for the underserved communities. Then school mapping exercise is very, very important because it leads to the enhancement of resource allocation. So there is enhanced resource allocation when it comes to once we embark on school mapping, because effective allocation of resources based on the specific school needs of each school will be identified, will be carried out. Now we have embarked on school mapping exercise. School A has more resources, maybe more physics teachers than school B. So school B needs more physics teachers. So we will now say, okay, let's transfer one or two physics teachers to school B. By so doing, the allocation of resources has been made effective. And this is to ensure that each school receives the necessary resources for optimal learning and growth. Some schools might need more computers. Some schools might need more, textbooks than others. So we can rationalize the available resources so that school A that needs physics teachers will be given physics teachers. School B that requires more mathematics teachers will be allocated more mathematics teachers, so that there will be optimal learning and growth of the school and the student. Another importance is that school mapping promotes inclusive education. inclusive education. When we say inclusive education, it is a concept in special needs education parlance. Inclusive education is a concept in special needs education parlance. It is a kind of system in which both the able and the less able, you know, come together under the same roof to receive education. And that is why when I started in one of my previous lectures, I said that we want to create access in such a way that a particular school will not be dominated mainly by the advantaged people or students, or a particular school will not be dominated mainly by marginalized people. So to promote inclusive education, we need school mapping, because school mapping or mapping out schools can aid in ensuring equal access to education for all students, including those from marginalized communities. You know, the special needs children, the almajiris, the girl child, the children on the streets, and so on and so forth. When we map our school, knowing fully well that the essence is to create access, then we'll be able to, you know, uh, accommodate people from marginalized communities. Then enhanced safety. Yeah, enhanced safety, because when we carry out school mapping exercise, we want to identify locations that are best suitable to site new schools. In essence, school mapping helps to identify potential hazards. Hazards like high traffic area, unsafe buildings, a lack of security or infrastructure. So, but when we carry out a very good school mapping exercise, all these hazards, we'll be able to identify them. And the essence is to promote student safety, not even only students, staff. Because mapping can also be used to plan evacuation routes in case of emergencies. If there are issues, if there is the need for emergency, how do people, the students, the teachers, how would they escape? But when we have effective school mapping exercise, we're able to identify evacuation routes. Then what about long-term planning? What about long-term planning? Identification of long-term needs and trends within the education system is one of the reasons why we need school mapping exercise. Because school mapping exercise aids our effective identification of long-term needs. We have started at the beginning of the section. For the time being, we can quickly address whatever inequality we noticed, while we go back to the drawing board, and come up with, strategic planning, because we have seen that, those terms that we need in the future, in the nearest future. We have seen the trends in the education system. A particular area, a particular educational district is witnessing high population, high student enrollment. We can only know this when we carry out school mapping exercise. And this will make policymakers, we that are policymakers, we that are educational planners, to be able to anticipate future challenges and plan accordingly in order to ensure the provision of quality education for all students. For all students. So to that extent, school mapping exercise, ensures long-term planning, Um, at this juncture, what are the stages, you know, involved? What are the phases in school mapping exercise? You know, don't forget that virtually all the definitions that have been put forward, talk about school mapping being a process. And when something is a process, that thing has stages. That thing has to be done procedural. You have stages, you have phases that you need to follow, one step before the other. Steps A, B, C, D, not C, D, B, A. The steps have to be followed chronologically, and that is why the first stage in school mapping exercise is the stage of data collection. The stage of data collection. One of the definitions that I highlighted in my previous videos, talks about documenting data, the process of documenting data, because you want to start, you cannot just locate any school, new schools. You cannot just redistribute resources. You cannot just rationalize any available educational resources without having data to work with. And I keep saying that we that are educational planners, we rely mainly on data. And therefore, data collection is the first stage in school mapping process. We need data on the location of schools. We need data on student enrollment. We need data on student demographics, their background, demographic information about the local population, and other factors that may impact education quality, such as poverty rates, such as availability of transportation. In a particular district, how many schools do we have there? Vis-a-vis the school-going age children, what is the demographic makeup of the school? What is the demographic, the population structure of the community? What is the situational analysis, regarding the existing infrastructure and facilities? We need data. This is when we can map out school effectively. The next one is the stage of data processing and analysis. The stage of data processing and analysis. So one thing is to collect data. Another thing is what? To analyze, to process and analyze the data. So at this stage usually involves the use of geographic information system that I mentioned when I was talking about the historical developments of school mapping. So we need geographic information system software to create information-rich digital maps that will provide a range of insights. So we at this stage have to process the data that have been collected. After processing, we analyze. When you analyze, you get the true picture, of the entire school system across the communities. So we will have access to information-rich digital maps that give us different kinds of insights and information to work with. Don't forget that processed data results in information, and information is being used to take informed decisions. After the second stage, we move on to stakeholder engagement. You need people. School mapping exercise is another way of democratizing education. When you democratize education, you are giving every stakeholders, ample opportunity to hear their views. You want to locate school in a particular community. You need the people, the elders in that community to give you information, because you cannot just locate school anywhere, anyhow. So we need the involvement, we need the engagement of community members, the school administrators, the teachers, the parents, and other interested parties. So when you are engaging stakeholders, you may explore the avenue of public meetings. You may use survey. You may use focus groups discussion. But the essence is to seek the opinions. Even if you want to redistribute, you want to rationalize the existing resources, you still have to go to seek the opinions of the school administrators. How many physics teachers do we have? How many mathematics teachers? How many educational, counselors do we have? Give us the data. You are engaging them, and you can use any avenue to do that. So from there, we move on to the next stage. That is where we prioritize uh, what we want to do. Because after the engagement with the stakeholders, you gather your information. You marry the information with the data that you have processed, that you have analyzed, data that you have collected, data that you have processed and analyzed. You juxtapose them, information there with the stakeholders' engagement. Through that, you will know what to do first. So we need to prioritize and embark on strategic development. So at that stage, there could be the involvement of prioritizing construction of new schools. What are the targeted informations for specific student population or infrastructure improvement? What policies do we need to take to address, issues that were raised during stakeholders' engagement? Strategies to take, and of course, strategies that may include targeted interventions to improve learning outcomes, to address infrastructure improvement, or for policy reform. The strategies that we did in a particular educational district may be different from another district. That is why we have to prioritize what we need to do, because what a particular educational district is experiencing might be different from another one. And that is why we need to prioritize what we need to do and, of course, embark on strategic development. The next one is implementation. Implementation. This is the stage where we now execute the school mapping exercise. At the implementation stage, we may be talking about allocating resources. We may be talking about redistributing resources. We may be talking about, creating policies, new policies, formulating policies, creating programs, or working with community organizations to identify issues, to address issues identified, through school mapping. So, school A needs the following kinds of resources, then we allocate. We need to come up with new policies that will address, the needs of special needs children. Then we come up with the policy. What about the programs? How do we can we put in place individualized education programs, IEPs, that will target special needs children? Can we come up with policies that would, bring back children that have left school, policies that will ensure that we are able to work with a community and the organizations so that we can address various issues that we have in the school mapping exercise. So the last stage in school mapping process is the stage of monitoring and evaluation, M&E, the stage of monitoring and evaluation. At that stage, the decision makers will be able to determine if the interventions have achieved the intended outcomes or not. And of course, if there is the need for further adjustments to the strategies or interventions, if further adjustment to the existing strategies or interventions are necessary, further adjustment to the strategies, new interventions may become necessary if the interventions we have put in place are not achieving the intended outcomes. So we need to keep monitoring and evaluating all these processes. So, and of course, that is why school mapping exercise is usually seen as a continuous, process. It's a continuous process. It has to be taking place, at the beginning of every section. Dear listeners, I think I've been able to really, do justice within, my own level of knowledge. Yeah, I've been able to do justice to the historical developments, the importance, and the stages involved in school mapping process. Uh, as usual, as usual, for you to be able to be receiving all these, you know, educative videos, lectures, you need to subscribe to this channel. You need to hit the notification bell. And of course, I also like to welcome comments. Comments on how, in terms of your contributions, how you have also perceived school mapping, how you can define school mapping. You know, what do you think school mapping, we do to the entire education system? So your contributions are welcome. Once again, I'm Maruf Akinwale Oladejo from the Department of Educational Management, University of Lagos, Lagos, Nigeria. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And God bless you.